Welcome back. Thanks for joining us. I'm Jonathan Fisher. It seems like business leaders are always on the search for faster, better, more cost-effective ways to grow their companies. But sometimes the best way to find a fresh edge is to become far more effective with the team and resources you already have. And here with us today to help do just that is our guest, Sam Kuehnle. Sam comes to us as one of these a group of younger business leaders that have come on the scene recently who are showing the big guys how to get it done when it comes to B2B client acquisition. He brings a decade of experience as a demand generation specialist. Today he works as the VP of Marketing for Tech Startup LOXO. And today's conversation is going to be it's going to be a smorgasbord of a fresh take on proven ways you can quickly generate a dramatic boost in sales for your tech or SaaS company. And it's going to be a very wide-ranging conversation. Sam, we're looking forward to that, and we're grateful to have you on the program with us today. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here. This is going to be a fun one and a great way to end the week.
Well, and I do love the fact that you bring a lot of fresh insights to how to get some of the most fundamental things done in growing a company. And maybe the best place is to lead off with, how did you arrive at some of the insights that you're going to be sharing with us? What's some of the different experiences you've had and what you've seen?
Yeah, it's been a lot of trial and error, figuring things out, and what I like to just call common sense marketing, where I'll look at something I'm doing and saying, like, does that really make sense? So I guess quick background. I grew up in a family where we've had an advertising agency for 3 generations. So I was kind of surrounded by the business world. But from there, a lot of my experience before coming over to Refine Labs and then LOXO was in a large enterprise company running or helping with some of the demand gen marketing. And I started finding myself more and more doing these campaigns that I'm thinking, this isn't how I do my own research. This isn't how I go about making purchases. Why am I making things different than how I think they should be done? And that's what really started to make me think, like, fundamentally, does this make sense for how people are buying in today's world? Or is this an old playbook that used to work, but isn't really shifting and adopting with the times?
Well, and yeah, that's just it, right? I mean, a lot of things are done in business because that's the way they've been done. And the forest for trees syndrome kicks in as well, right? It's difficult to see from the outside. So, in terms of your background in doing business development of different types, you've got a digital marketing background, this whole philosophy of demand generation, which really Refine Labs, where you worked for several years, has been sort of an innovative leader in that front. Talk to us about what you still see. You've worked with different companies, so you're seeing some specific things that are, let's just say they're not getting it done very effectively. What are some of the leading mistakes that you see being made out there when it comes to client acquisition?
Yeah, and I will preface this. I started my career as an account development representative, now BDR. So I more than respect and understand how hard that job was. To this day, I still think that's harder than what I do right now. So fully understand just how difficult it is. But yeah, a lot of the things that I see companies doing where I've learned, is this really the best way, or should we start trying something different, is how you're going about trying to get these customers. So when you're running your marketing campaigns, when you're doing your BDR prospecting or your sales outreach, you have to think about, what's the end goal? It's to get a customer. It's to get them to buy our product or service. Then when you go on the marketing side, so what I've seen is, okay, well, marketing is responsible for 1,000 leads per month, 10,000 leads per month, whatever it is. And it's like, well, one, compare that to the total size of your ICP or your total addressable market. And you're like, well, if I get 1,000 leads per month, I'm going to run through my market in however many times. Like, those numbers don't quite make sense. So then let's look at the definition. Well, what are these leads that marketing is responsible for? And what it used to be was, a lead was someone that is prepared and ready to talk to sales in a conversation. It kind of became diluted over time as these goals became larger and larger with the predictive sales model. And it became, okay, well, a lead is now someone who's downloaded an ebook, someone who's read a white paper, someone who has attended a webinar. But all those assets are more people who are trying to either be educated about problem, pain, something that they're working towards. They're just trying to gather information and do research. So these aren't people who, to go to the initial definition, like, they aren't ready to talk to sales. They don't want to. So I've been thinking about that. And then you and I both know, we have been trained. You go on a website, you look at the top right corner, that's where you go when you want to talk to someone, right? Buyers are very smart. When they're doing their research, they know the difference between downloading a white paper, downloading or signing up for a webinar, and then, I want to talk to sales. I want to get the free trial. So that's where this kind of mix has come into play, and it's really started to shift. Like, is this the best way that we should be going about trying to get people over from the marketing to sales handoff?
Do you feel like that the a part of the issue is just sort of a cultural one inside these companies? I mean, at the end of the day, not everyone is fully staked into the company. They have a job to do, and they're actually being measured that they're getting X results, which comes back to KPIs. We have the conversation a lot on our show. Do you think that's where a lot of the misalignment comes from? Is just, hey, I've got to show that I'm worth it in this job position I've got, and maybe speak to that just a bit, if you would.
Yeah, it starts with the goals. And so that's the biggest thing, is the reason that sales and marketing have been starting to become disjointed is the leadership starting with the revenue. We need to hit this much in ARR this year, or whatever the number is. And then by the time that gets diluted to marketing, it says marketing is responsible for leads. Marketing is not responsible for pipeline. Marketing is not responsible for revenue. And that's where this disconnect happens, is marketing is just like, all right, well, I'm going to get my leads, and then I don't care what happens after that. So the shift that we've been making is, when I've been working with different clients, customers, and what I'm doing at LOXO now is I'm getting alignment from day one and saying, our North Star is revenue. I don't care if it takes us 1 lead, 100 leads, 100,000 leads to get to that. If we are accomplishing this goal or on pace to it, that is what success looks like. I don't want you to get caught up in this like cost per lead. How low can we make it? Because what I want to look at the end of the day is the customer acquisition cost, and is that sustainable for our company to grow? So that's where it has to come back to. The goals for marketing do need to be tied in, like sales, with revenue. And then this is where the whole attribution conversation comes into play. I don't know if we want to go down that rabbit hole just quite yet, but there are different metrics that we can still look at from the marketing standpoint aside from revenue. So I can quickly touch on those if you want, or I can stop for a second and see what you think there.
Yeah, I definitely do want to dive into that, but let's keep a little altitude just for a bit.
Yeah.
Let's talk about what most business development folks are focused on in their tech or SaaS company, and that's getting demos, right? I mean, that's really where it begins. How is that happening typically, or at least how are people trying to make that happen versus how they should be making it happen?
Yeah. So when I think about it I'll do the marketing side, and then we can go into like the business development side. But the most common way that marketing is looking for it, it's not the most effective, but how do we increase our spend? How do we lower our cost per lead? Those are usually done by widening targeting. So it's not the quality people that you want anymore. It's by pushing out different marketing materials that aren't really leads, like we said earlier. So what I usually like to look at is, okay, well, if those aren't the best methods, then maybe we should put more spend at creating brand awareness, but not in the sense of just get our name out there, but build trust, build authority in the space, so that our prospects understand, like, hey, LOXO actually does know what they're talking about here. They understand our pains. They are talking about different best practices that show like they have subject matter experts in there who get what we do. And so when you do that, that's how you can really help to build that trust and authority in this space. So it's not enough to just like put an ad in front of your audience. It needs to be in the right channel where they're spending their time. It needs to be something that's valuable, helpful, entertaining for them. So the marketing side, that's what I've learned. And I think that it does translate pretty closely over to BDRs. And I work closely with our BDR manager to look at like, what are the sequences that we're sending out? Because I know that we all get a lot of BDR outreach. And again, hardest job I've ever had. But when you go and look at some of the outreach that goes out, you start to think like, would I read this? Would I engage with this? Is this helpful to me? Or is it almost like the company is just talking about, hey, look at us, look at this shiny feature, look at this, look at that, but they don't really ever connect the dot to like what the customer or the prospect really wants or needs to get out of it. So how do you turn the conversation and make it focused about them? And then you're the guide that helps them to get to that goal.
Well, there's a lot to be said for building trust in the brand. I mean, there's no shortage of research that will show that trust and respect is a gargantuan proportion of how people decide where, what, and with whom they're going to make their purchases, particularly in business. But that brings you to a challenge, because how do you draw ROI out of an initiative that is a brand play when you're being measured on your cost and your spend? And it sounds like you've tried to grapple with that, your conversations with BDRs on the ground, as it were. So how can leaders, how can the C-suite actually measure ROI? Is it a longer game? Can you start to draw correlations and build the case that way? Because otherwise you're relying on just kind of your intuition and it sounds good, right? Talk to us about that.
Yeah, it's the fun one. That's the $1 million question that I think people are trying to figure out to this day. And so that's what we were talking or what I was mentioning earlier about attribution. And ideally, yes, that should work. But what happens with attribution platforms is you're only able to get so much information. So when we talk about attribution, it's when someone came in, you're usually seeing, was it sourced by an AE? Did they attend this event? Did they sign up for a webinar? Did they come directly to our website? Did they come from SEO? Did they come from this paid social campaign? And so what that is that's often the last touch before they say, I want to talk to sales, or before they're pushed over. What that doesn't include is what built the trust in the first place, what generated the awareness, how they understood that you were authoritative in the space. And that's where a lot of this marketing awareness comes into play. So what I always like to do is I start off a conversation with the C-suite and I say, before we go into this, let's talk about the last purchase you made for the company. How'd you go about it? And so you'll often start to hear, well, I talked to my buddy over at this company who uses it. I checked out the Pavilion group to hear what they said. I saw someone on a podcast. The list goes on, and I'll start to say none of those are going to show up in this attribution platform. And these are where we're investing our time. So that's where you have to start to break out of that obsession with the quantitative data that's flowing in through all these platforms. And you have to use the common sense marketing I was getting back to and just say, okay, like, stop being business hat for 1 second and think about how do people make these purchase decisions and go about the research process in today's world.
Well, and it sounds like what you're kind of saying is it's almost, there's as much art as there is science in this whole thing, correct? I mean, you do have to follow your intuitions, but if you'll do that, you can make that case. I mean, there's no doubt about it that if you are trying to let the technology do it all, you're going to have gaps, just like if you don't use technology effectively, right? So a lot of it's about maybe effectively pairing up, thinking of technology as a tool that you're still using in the very human work of generating business. Would you agree with that as well? Are folks maybe expecting too much of the technology? Is that part of it?
Yeah, no, I agree with that. And there still are ways where you can get the data. It's just thinking about, like, when you go on from that conversation you asked them. So when you finally did reach out to start the conversation, how did you do it? And it's usually I just went to Nike.com to buy their running shoes, or I reached out directly to the COO there who I have a relationship. So I say, okay, those are going to show up because you recognize the brand. So we'll look at things like organic brand search, paid brand search, people who come directly to the website, and we'll look at that lift over time. And what we usually see if we're doing our job is that the number of those searches, the number of users that come in from that is going up to the right, because that means you're winning before Google, so to speak. They're not coming in looking for what's the best X software. They're just going, oh, LOXO.co. They're coming straight to our website. We aren't competing with others. So when you have that stickiness, so to speak, in their heads, they're coming straight to you. That's where you can look at those types of metrics. And also, like, are they coming to your pricing page more often? Are they coming to the talk to sales or whatever other pages? And then that's where it gets into the metrics that I care about. How many people are asking to get a demo? How many people are actually attending those demos? And then what's turning into sales qualified opportunities? How many are closing?
Well, and that sounds like when you do it that way, you're already giving a leg up to your team on the front lines, right? If someone just showing up to a demo because I kind of got talked into it, it's very different from someone who they showed up looking for something.
Exactly. And that's why I love that first conversation with the sales leaders when they're there, because I say, we're not going to be giving you these leads that don't want to talk to you. The people that come over, if you don't follow up with them, I'm going to follow up with you and try to figure out what's going on. Why don't you want these? Because these are all people who are explicitly saying they want to talk to you. And we are so tight with our targeting and our messaging that this is the people that you want to be having conversations with. We built this audience based on exactly who you said buys, the reasons that they enjoy your product and everything else. So that's where we work heavily to validate, like, are these the right people? And that's why we start to see such a more efficient funnel, because although they might have been used to 1,000 leads at the top, but only 10 opportunities in that month, I'm saying I'm going to get you 100 leads at the top, but these people want to talk to you and you're going to have 70 opportunities from it. So that's the difference there.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Well, I mean, that's already going to give a lot more quick wins to the team. But we made a promise at the front of the show here, Sam, to get some quick wins to the listener. And so maybe let's go through and maybe just list a few things they could do. Like, literally, it's a Friday. They could come in on Monday. They can start to implement. And I'm going to let you start off. What will be the number one thing if you were going to talk to a biz dev guy or gal and they want to make something happen right now? Where would you start?
Yeah. Partner with your marketing team or whoever, but think about the typical experiences. Someone goes, they say, I want to talk to sales. They fill out a form, and then they get this called the screen of death. Thanks for reaching out. We'll be in touch in 24 to 48 hours. You can't do that anymore. People are going to go find your competitors. They're going to go to other alternatives, or you're going to end up playing phone and email tag and never hear back from them with the majority. So I usually see with organizations doing this, they're sitting at about like a 30% conversion rate of people that say they want to talk to you to just sitting on that first call. Remember, these are people who want to talk to you and you're only getting 3 out of 10. Like that doesn't make sense. So the easiest things you can do is look at things like Chili Piper, Calendly, like HubSpot has a schedulers, but just stick that on the form and let them pick the date and time that works for them. Like I've seen this increase the number of people that raise their hand to attending that first meeting from 30% to 70% within a month of implementing. It's not complicated, but by giving them the power to do that, it makes a world of a difference in just the people that do show up because they know when it'll happen. And it's just, it's what we expect kind of in today's culture, just having that to plan for, because I know if I get a number that calls my cell phone and it's not mine, I'm just screening it every time. Like it's so much harder to have those connect. So give them the power to schedule and just watch the difference between your conversion rates there.
I really resonate with that one because as a guy who interacts with a lot of companies, it's shocking how few still use scheduling technology. Great. Fast win number one. I'm going to take a brief pause and remind our listening audience, hey, we're live. Bring your questions, and you don't need to wait. Go ahead and post them in chat right now. And just in a few short minutes, we're going to veer over and get your questions answered with our expert right here, right now, this evening. So post those in chat, and we'll circle back shortly. So, quick win number one is use a scheduler. It kind of sounds like a no-brainer. It's very inexpensive, but I love that. Hit us with another one, Sam. You're on a roll.
Oh, man. Another one. Second part is make sure that you have the right people fielding those calls when they come in. So a lot of BDRs took the calls to vet these ebook downloads, the webinars. What we've seen is when we're slimming it down from 1,000 people to 100 people in a month, you can start having people with more intimate knowledge of your product or service take those first calls. So you can use some routing rules or other things, but these are people who are much more qualified. They fit your ICP. So when you have them on that first call, be able to go into a deeper discovery, potentially a light demo, but they're ready. They want to have this conversation. And I know sometimes like I'm new to the company. I've been going and purchasing a couple of different products. When I have that first call, I'm strapped for time. The last thing I want to do is just go through and answer all the questions that I already answered before, something that could have been done very quickly via email. So I want to talk to someone who I'm just like, let's hash this out. I know what I want. Show it to me. Make sure it works. And then let's go from there. So if you're able to do that, or whether it's just testing, like try it out with a couple of your sales reps first, you'll often see your sales cycle goes faster because you're able to get rid of those first couple of calls. You build the trust quicker. It's amazing how much or how far sales rep charisma and the ability to just understand quickly will help with the relationship and increasing your win rates there.
I do like that. As one who's worked with companies in scale, sometimes though you do have your organization set up in a way to screen, and it makes sense. You kind of have to have one or even two conversations before you can kind of push it through the funnel. Do you have some recommendations if you're set up that way? Would you maybe have like more of a senior AE like on call, start the call with one, or are you talking about maybe just restructuring your whole go-to-market plans with your team? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I'd say you could try the on call if you want, or since you're seeing, you should be able to code or understand what was the conversion point this person entered the funnel from. Was it an ebook? Was it a webinar? Send them to BDRs all day. If it was the like, get a demo, talk to sales, let them go straight to sales. You know, they have that intent and everything else. So you can do little levers like that. If you use Salesforce or HubSpot, you can sync those forms. Your operations person will know exactly what that is. And then you can just create different routing rules there to be able to make that happen. So I'm always a big proponent of experiment, test, pick out if you're a large sales organization, pick out one sales team or one rep, try it out, see what happens. And then you can decide from there with your own data.
Well, we talk a lot about velocity of sales, and also if you've been in business for very long, you're trying to buy something, and someone's going through their script, and you can see the bullets. You could probably write down the bullets on their script yourself, and you're painfully going through. I think your advice comes as a refreshing suggestion, Sam, to just move a little quicker. Is that kind of where you're coming from in part?
Yeah, I mean, the name of the game is just how do I resolve this pain? How do I make purchasing as painless as possible? So it's a win-win for everyone. The more that you're able to do that and meet them on their terms, I've only seen it work well. I think your audio cut out.
You're ready to move as fast as your client is and have the appropriate person fielding that call. Another way to get a quick win. Hey, keep it rolling, Sam, what's another way on Monday that a biz dev leader can get a quick win?
Another way to get them rolling on Monday. Look at your outbound sequences and everything else. So the simple framework, I use this for marketing. I use this with our BDR team. Everything else is basically, would I respond to this? Would I read this? Would I listen to this? So gut check yourself with that. And as long as you can be honest, you'll get a good sense of it. But I mean, if I go through and look at my last 10 LinkedIn DMs, 8 of them are pitches. The worst ones are the ones that say something like this. Hi, Jonathan. Smiley, me again. Apologies for the professional persistence. I just really think you could benefit from our product. Here's a link to my calendar to grab some time. Reality of that is, like, dude, this is the 5th time you've reached out to me. This isn't the one that's doing the trick. This is the one that just blocked your number and had you marked as spam. People are going to reply within the first couple if they want to reply. Like, yes, I understand that there's the other side that says you should be polite, you should reply. But if I replied to every cold prospecting email call that come through, like, I'm not going to have time to do my job. So that's where it's the balance and using the common sense from the SDR side. If I haven't heard from them on the 4th one, I'm just going to push them out to next month, because there is I call it like the burn bridge factor. So the predictable revenue model was this great thing a handful of years ago. You make 100 calls or emails, you're going to get 10 meetings booked. That's great, right? But what happens with the other 90? 50 are just going to ignore you. Again, they don't have the time. 20 might reply and say they're not interested. 10 are probably going to unsubscribe and block your number. And then 5 or 10 are probably pretty pissed at you at this point. You burn the bridge with them and are never going to become a customer. And so those aren't simple did not connects, but those are people who are now market detractors, are reducing the size of your TAM. So you really have to think about, is this worth burning those bridges and everything else? Or how do we accommodate with the times where it's just like, if people are ignoring me, how do we push them out? How do we work with the ways that they want to buy and research today and create a relationship instead of just this like, hey, me again conversation that isn't going anywhere?
Yeah, I like that. Well, and you can lose rapport pretty quick like that. You can go from a colleague to just another salesperson, and that's not a good thing, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So I like that. So how you give us some nuts and bolts on that though? So I mean, you have usually these sequences are set up in most companies. What are your recommendations for how to actually apply what you've just said?
Yeah, that's the fun part. Goes back to partially that mental framework. Just read all your emails. Would I respond to this? Is this actually helpful if I were the one being pitched here? But the other way I think about it is, how do you just do better research to understand who you should be reaching out to? So there is more information than ever available, especially publicly. So you can go to third-party sites, G2, Capterra, to understand like who's researching us. They have partnership of opportunities where you can get that data from them. You can put scripts on your own website to see. I know LinkedIn does a great job of audience tracking. If you have the cookie on your site, you can see what are the companies that are coming to your website. And you can even drill down to certain pages. So I say to our BDRs, hey, here's 100 people that have hit our website in this week. 90 of them are within ICP. It's not going to tell you the job title or the person, but we have a very specific ICP. So we know who to reach out to from that group. This is informed, and it's not full intent, but like you can go be more intelligent with who you're reaching out to, because they at least know who we are if they've been on our website and everything else. So that's a big thing that I would be looking at. And then the other part of it is the people who are doing the research has changed a lot in the last handful of years too. So I always love this story. I come back to it, but I had a client I was working with one time, and I was on a call and they said, we got a lead from a target account, but the title was too junior, so we DQ'd it. I was about ready to scream. And I said, you need to call them right now and see what they wanted, because they asked for a demo. So they went back out, they reached out, they had the demo. Guess what they learned on that demo? It was an intern who was tasked specifically from the CEO to do research, to figure out the platform that they need, to book the discovery, sit on it, make sure it checked the boxes, and then guess who was on the next call? The CEO. So that's the other big thing, is look more at, are these accounts that are perfect fit for our partnership that could work with us, and don't get so caught up in the title being the person that's going to sign the contract on the first showing of intent.
That's a great story, and yeah, you just never know. You know, if they're coming when the energy is flowing this direction, you don't want to miss the opportunity.
Yeah. So it'll definitely catch up. But yeah, I mean, all in all, I'd say when you're thinking about your outreach sequences, like go back to the basics. Is it focused on helping them, not you? So don't talk about features. Talk about pains that they're going through, things that they're trying to accomplish, jobs to be done, framework. And the more that you can come from a consultative relationship place, not a sales pitch, you're probably going to land a little bit better. And so part of that is not expecting or asking for a call. So like we said earlier, there's nothing worse than the person who says, here's a link to my calendar, let's talk. It's like, I don't know you. You haven't earned this call or response from me yet. You need to provide me with value first, or at least let me know who you are, so I can figure out, is this something that we would benefit from. But the assumption mindset is part of, I think it used to be easier to get away with, but in today's day and age, to me, and this is where, again, always take everything with a grain of salt that I say, this is my experience, but that starts to grind on me a little bit, where I'm just like, why are you assuming when you don't know exactly what I'm going through? I just showed up on your list.
Yeah. To me, that's right up there with, hi, I'm a stranger. I've never met you. How you doing today? And, on a cold call. I'm like, you don't really care how I'm doing. You might. Want to try a better lead in than that?
Yeah.
So I love your advice on that front. Keep it attuned to what's really happening. There's a theme that keeps recurring in what you're suggesting here, Sam, and it sounds kind of like folks just aren't engaging with the human side of this whole thing. Like, put yourself on the other side. Use your empathy, your understanding. Think about, if you're the buyer, how do you want to be treated? Is it almost like this is the Sam Kuehnle golden rule approach to building a better funnel management?
I mean, I'm not going to take credit for this. This has definitely been something that I think just the best companies have done. But the reason that it stands out is that 99% of your competition are taking this approach. So if you're able to do this, you're going to stand out so much more. You're going to be a trusted advisor. And because you recognize the psychology of the fact that like 98% of your market isn't actively looking to buy right this second, but they will be when they're out of their next contract, when their budget cycle clears up, when their next fiscal year comes around. So the goal is for you and your company to be top of mind, so that when they do, they're coming straight to you. Again, they're not typing in what's the best X software, but they're coming straight to your website or straight to your inbox and saying, hey man, got great news. We just got cleared for a budget. Let's get started on this. So it's giving yourself a leg up, but it's investing in the future pipeline, not today's pipeline. But that's where that snowball gets started. You're going to have to eat it for the first 3 months or so to build that. But that's that investment that's going to pay off for the next 6, 12, 24 months for you.
Well, I love it. Well, it has been, as promised, a very fast-paced conversation. We've hit a lot of different areas of both marketing and sales. It's a conversation that I know a lot of our listeners would love to take further. What are some of the best ways they can do that, Sam?
Yeah, I'm active on LinkedIn. So if you're ever curious about my thoughts on marketing, business, B2B, anything, I'm definitely not shy to share any thoughts there. But I also love to chat with people there. So comments, DMs, feel free to find me on there, and I'm happy to continue the conversation.
Okay, and that's Sam Kuehnle, but it's spelled Kuehnle to our podcast listeners. Definitely jump in there and keep the conversation going with Sam. Sam's the kind of guy that's happy to share the goodies regardless of the outcome for him in terms of personal business, which I love that. He treats the social network as just that. We have the opportunity to network with other business owners, so thanks for doing that, Sam. Well, at this point, let's transition over. We're getting some questions coming in from our live audience, and we want to jump in and start to take some of those the live Q&A. Let's bring this one in from Dennis Hamilton. He asked a really good question. Sam, let's say you're using a sequence. What would you say is the maximum number of touch points or the time between touch points for a B2B sale?
That's a great question. Assuming that this is just kind of cold outreach, they hadn't explicitly said, I want to talk to you or anything yet. Depends on the complexity of the sale. As an enterprise, is a pretty quick purchase, but one, use your common sense and judgment there. But when I'm working with my team, they usually like to use 14-day or 30-day sequence sprints. So I'll say, okay, day one, you can send them a quick email or try to give them a call if you want. But again, make sure you're coming from a consultative approach, not just a pitch. A couple days after, I always tell them, go get your junior high creep on, where find out where these people are spending their time. Most people are active on some social platform. A lot of sales, marketing, recruiters, others or on LinkedIn. So I say, go find their profile, see what content they're engaging with, see what they're tweeting about. If they're on Twitter, comment on their posts, tweet back, start a dialogue. And what happens is you're going to start to connect with them. You're going to put a face to it. And they see you as someone who's adding to the conversation, and you're actually providing value to them. You're not trying to pitch them right off the bat, but that's going to help give you that quick relationship to start. Do that for a bit. Don't pitch them, but after you've had a little bit of back and forth, send them a connect request. Please do not include a pitch in your connect request on LinkedIn. But after you've done that for 2 weeks or so, then you can say, hey, I work with a lot of companies like yours. They said they've been focusing on 2023 budgeting right now. Here's a blog post, a podcast, a video they said was helpful, sharing in case you found the same. You can start to open up the conversation that way, but the more that you just push and push with calls and emails, those are the channels that are very inundated right now. So the ability to connect with them, put a face first, and then come from just other channels that aren't being inundated in bad connections or pitches, it's going to help you stand out.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, it's almost, if I could summarize what I'm hearing from you here, Sam, it's almost like the quality of what you're doing is even more important than the quantity or even the frequency. Is that fair?
Yeah, and then it's like the common sense side of it. But I know he asked for like specific maximum number of touch points. I'd say don't do more than 3 or 4 in a 2-week window. Especially if they aren't responding. 2 max in the first week, maybe a third one in the second week. But after that, read the room a little bit. If you go to a bar and you talk to someone, they give you the cold shoulder the first time, the second time, the third time. Are you going to go up that fourth time like that quickly, or should you cool off a little bit?
Right. There's that line between persistent and creepy. So that's good stuff. Levi Popak asked a great question here, Sam. Let's bring this to the page. What are some funnel management strategies you can suggest? So a lot of what you're talking about is going to require some nuts and bolts application. Can you give us a little bit more in terms of mistakes and fixes on that front?
Yeah, funnel management. So the biggest one that you can control is what I mentioned earlier. Just give them the ability to schedule right then and there. Those are people who you don't have to, they're already coming to you and saying they want to talk, right? So how do you just get more of them through your funnel to your team? Other things, there's an exercise that we're big fans of doing. We call it split the funnel. But basically, when most business executives look at their company funnel, they blend everything. So all of their leads from BDRs, all of their leads from marketing sources, all of their event leads, everything else. But what we say is, let's start to split those up. Look at the BDR funnel, look at the event, look at the people who come from the requested demo, look at the people who come from the webinar, and you'll find very different conversion rates within those. And the resources that go into them, the psychology behind them are very different. So what you'll often find is like marketing at 1,000 leads, only 100 of them came from the demo, 900 came from webinar. But those webinars, you might see, it looks great up top, really low cost per lead, high number, but only one customer out of all of them. Is that effective? Is that the best use of your time? So you can start to analyze your funnel and say, what is inefficient for us? Where are we spending? And then, okay, if we're seeing that this people who want to talk to us funnel is super efficient, let's pull the resources from the inefficient side and then say, what's the psychology that lead the people to come into the wanting to talk to us? And that's the brand, that's the trust, that's showing you understand the space. And so you have to invest in those mechanisms. But when you do, you'll start to see that funnel gets bigger, and that's where you're selling more. So that's probably the biggest one that I could think of and would recommend.
Do you feel like there's a lot of what should we call it, slop or questionable data in your average funnel? Just to add my own follow-up question to this.
Yeah, part of it depends on your database, and also depends on where people are coming in, because a lot of the slop data from marketing that I've seen are people that want the ebook, they want the white paper, but they know that behind it is going to be a sales pitch. So I have spam email accounts that I use where if I want to go get this download, I know that I'm going to be linked over to the PDF right after I fill it out. I'm going to give them a make it up email address. I've used Pizza Hut phone numbers in Washington, D.C. before for phone numbers for them to call back on. I want the asset at the end of the day. So that's where, if you want clean data, again, the people that want you to call them, they're going to give you their email, their phone number, because they want your call. If they want the asset, they don't want you to call, they're going to go routes like I've done there.
Yeah. Love it. Joshua Bailey asked a good question we'll bring up at this point. How important is humor as far as, is it a good way to stand out and connect in your outreach? Talk to us about that.
Yeah, if it's your personality, I think so. I mean, definitely be true to yourself and don't force it. But I think there's great ways of just leveraging a little bit of humor. Gifts go a long way in humanizing, especially just having a little bit of fun, adding some personality to things. So I'm always quick to add in little inflections of personality because again, that makes you stand out a little bit more. It makes them see it's like, oh, this isn't just a person reading off of a script, sending a canned response, but the way that they added to this shows that this could only have come from them because of the unique way that it was written out or spoken to on the phone.
Well, and is some of that, does that some of that come back to your branding as well? Like, I mean, you might have a more whimsical, humorous type of branding voice as opposed to if you're a bank. I mean, most banks probably, well, there may be exceptions, but something that's a little more staid or more straight laced. Is that part of the equation as well? Would you say?
Yeah, I mean, it depends on if it's like marketing, if it's coming from the brand, or if it's you coming from an individual. So I think the humanization side of it is way more powerful. Like we always tell our employees or anyone sharing, like, look, we trust you to be a respectable, honest person when you're going about sharing that you're not going to go and do anything that goes over the lines. You have common sense, right? So we let them do that, and again, that will help you stand out from some of the others. So use your head and think about where that line is with how you want to use it. But I've honestly seen it work out well because you're standing out that much more from the 5 other account execs who are trying to get their attention with this very buttoned up conversation that's just like, okay, they're a commodity at that point. But that Joshua over there, he's actually kind of funny. I like him. I want to give him the first shot before these other people.
Well, and Joshua is pretty funny, but that's a side note. So Levy's coming back with another good question here for us. What are some bad habits, speaking of quick wins, I guess, that a manager should quickly break in their team if possible? We've talked a lot about how to better use technology, how to manage funnels and build a better sales model. How about just like in terms of sheer everyday tactics that are in place? Are there some bad habits that we just need to like end like right now?
Bad habits. Are you thinking from like a BDR standpoint or a
Right.
larger messaging BDR
Well, anybody,
standpoint?
anybody in business development, are some things have been being done for so long. It might be
Yeah.
good if we could give a few to the listener to, hey, with your team, address it. Put it on a whiteboard. These are do nots. We have some do's. What are some do nots?
Yeah. I'd say just treating people as if they're a number or another dial or anything else. You can hear it in their voice. You can hear it in the way that they approach the conversation where it's just like, I'm just trying to get you over to the AE as quickly as possible. And they're just kind of like there versus the person that's just like, I want to help you. I really want to find a way to make your business thrive. And the difference in that is one, your commodity. As soon as they find a competitor who sells for $1 less, they're going to go with that one versus this other company. It's like, no, they're invested in me. They want me to be successful. Now you've not only gained a customer, but you've gained an amplifier. They're going to go and tell their peers about you. They're going to gladly sing your praises, share reviews, anything else. So it's this long tail effect that you don't always realize it, but especially with BDRs, like the energy, there have been companies that have been very, very similar products. I went with the one that I enjoyed working with the sales rep and the CSM more on because I felt that they wanted to give it their all in making sure that I was successful, that I was able to apply the product versus just like, here you go, enjoy it, have fun. I'm like, well, I know I'm not going to get much help from them in the future. So is the time, resource, investment from my side worth it now? Or should I eat this next month, switch the other one and know that they'll be a partner for 3 to 5 years?
Yeah, that makes a lot of difference. I love that. Well, Sam, you've done a great job. I really appreciate the value that you have given to the listener today. Thanks so much for being a fantastic guest here on Evolve Sales Leader today.
Yeah, it's been fun. I hope everyone enjoyed it. I know I did. I love talking to people. This is how I learn as well. So keep the questions coming.
Awesome. Well, and thank you to our audience. If you've been enjoying these broadcasts as much as we have here making them, you can go anytime and catch former guests. These live streams continue on as podcast episodes. So go check us out. It's called the Evolved Sales Leader. Anywhere you like to go and get your podcasts, grab and download your favorites to listen to while you're working out. Put in some windshield time or whatever else you're doing. Hey, multitasking can be effective if you use it the right way. And that's going to do it for today. Thanks again for being on the show and making it such a success. We'll see you the next time, same station. Signing off. Take care, everybody.